The alarm didn't wake me. The sound did. A deep, thunder-like groan rippled through the walls of North Star Wildlife Refuge, rattling cabinets and crawling straight into my bones. It was 3:11 a.m. when I grabbed the crash kit and ran toward the maternity wing. Brisa, our rescued brown bear, was in labor too early and in terrible pain. Her cries echoed through the corridor like something ancient and wounded. I saw her on a monitor, trembling in the straw, fighting for life inside her. But when the first newborn slipped into the hay, my breath stopped. That was no bear cub. I rushed through the double doors, my pulse racing faster than my footsteps. The maternity wing was dim and cold, the heat lowered intentionally to calm Brisa during labor. Luca was already there, pale and breathless, a headlamp hanging crooked across his forehead. It started 20 minutes ago, he panted. And it's bad, really bad. I didn't need the warning. Brisa's roars made the walls vibrate. She was in agony. On the monitor, her massive body shifted in the straw, muscles tightening, legs bracing, breath shaking. I whispered her name under my breath, like a promise. I'm here. I'm here. She had survived cruelty, chains, and darkness before we rescued her. She deserved peace. She deserved life, not this endless suffering. The contraction hit hard. Brisa pushed, and her first newborn slid into the straw, wrapped in its translucent birth sac. I leaned forward, waiting for the familiar outline of a cub. But when Brisa tore the sac open and began cleaning the infant, the truth hit me with a cold, physical force. The shape was wrong. The head, too narrow. The ears, too small. The muzzle, too long and delicate. My mind rebelled, flipping through every possibility, every excuse. Shadow, distortion, camera issue, presentation. But no, that wasn't a bear. Not even close. Before I could breathe, Brisa roared again, the second contraction ripping through her entire body. Another infant slid out, then a third tangled behind it. Lucas swore under his breath. She's delivering too fast. She can't keep this pace. He was right. She would exhaust. She could bleed. She could die. We may have to intervene, I said, my voice cracking. But we both knew this truth. A mother in the middle of birth will never let humans near her young. Not without blood. Not without war. Brisa pushed again, straining, panting, fighting for breath. 4, 5, 7. My horror thickened with every birth. The tiny bodies moved with unnatural precision, their slim paws flexing, grasping, their narrow muzzles twitching like tools built for purpose. And their tails. I refused to finish the thought. By the 8th birth, Brisa sagged, shaking with exhaustion. I slammed a code into the wall panel, forcing open the emergency shutter. I slid my arm through the port, reaching into her world of blood, hay, and terror. Brisa looked at me, eyes wild, pleading, not just for her, for them. It's me, I whispered. I'm here. With one steady pull, the 8th infant slipped into my hands, warm, slick, alive. And in that moment, staring at the tiny creature that should not exist, I knew our nightmare had only just begun. When the 8th newborn breathed in my palm, I should have felt triumph. New life usually brings a holiness into the room, a hush, a relief, a reminder that nature still chooses hope. But not this time. The air around us felt wrong, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Brisa groaned again. 2 more slid into the straw, slick and trembling, until 11 tiny bodies lay at her belly. Lucas stared, horror widening his eyes. This isn't possible, he whispered. Bears don't have litters like this. Not 11. Not this. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Brisa gathered her young close, trembling, exhausted beyond measure. I forced myself to look at them. Really look, and the truth pressed against my skull like a scream that had nowhere to escape. Their paws were shaped like hands. Their tails writhed like thin, searching ropes. And their mouths sharp, precise, too clean, too knowing for creatures only minutes old. Brisa nuzzled them with desperate tenderness, unaware of the nightmare she had delivered. Her instincts said mother. Mine said genetic horror. When Sura finally arrived, she froze at the observation window, voice caught in her throat. "Dear God," she whispered. I felt her hand on my shoulder, grounding me, reminding me I was still human, still capable of choice, even as everything around us slipped toward the unthinkable. "We need to examine one," I said finally, the words tasting like betrayal. "Just one. Carefully. Through the port. Minimal contact. Minimal stress." Sura nodded. Luca retrieved the smallest infant, its body trembling inside the retrieval sleeve. Under bright surgical lights, we saw the truth without shadows to shield us anymore. The tiny creature blinked, its eyes already slit open, gleaming with a dark, alert awareness no newborn should possess. Its tail curled and uncurled with eerie control. Its little fingers clutched the towel with intentional strength. "This isn't a cub," Luca whispered. The flatness in his voice made him sound like a child who had just learned monsters are real. "Then what is it? A mustelid?" I offered weakly. "Some kind of hybrid? A kit, not a cub." The word kit hung in the air like a funeral bell. The creature turned its head, sniffed the air, and without hesitation latched onto my thumb. Nursing, seeking, choosing me as warmth. Sura covered her mouth, torn between awe and revulsion. For a heartbeat, I felt something unexpected bloom in my chest, connection. It was absurd, terrifying, and heartbreakingly pure. A living thing was asking to be loved. Brisa's sudden roar shattered the moment. On the den monitor, she was thrashing weakly, searching for the missing infant. Panic, raw and primal, poured from her chest. That sound could break stone. "Back," I said. "Now." "She needs it back." We returned the kit. Brisa immediately gathered it close, licking it with frantic love. She counted her young with her muzzle, 1, 2, 3, 11, and only then did her breathing soften. When she finally rested, we stood in silence. No one spoke. No one could, because in that quiet, it became brutally clear. Someone, somewhere, had designed these creatures, and Brisa, broken and abused before she ever reached our refuge, had been nothing more than a vessel. A womb for a secret the world was never meant to witness. And now that secret was alive. The sun had not yet risen, but the world felt awake, too awake, as if the night itself was listening. Brisa slept at last, her massive body curled protectively around the impossible litter, her breath slow, ragged, and uneven. 11 tiny creatures twitched and wriggled against her belly, making those sharp little chirps that still sent a cold ache down my spine. I stood at the observation glass, staring through the red-lit den, and for the first time in my career, I didn't know whether we had witnessed a miracle or opened a door that should have stayed sealed. Luca returned to the lab to run more tests. Sura brewed a pot of scorched, bitter coffee neither of us touched. When the anesthesia tech arrived near dawn, she gasped at the sight of the kits, then fell silent. Horror, wonder, disbelief, they passed over her face like shadows from a passing storm. "What are you going to tell the board?" she finally asked Sura. "The truth," Sura replied, but her voice wavered. We all knew the truth was the one thing we couldn't afford. Not now. Maybe not ever. We waited an hour until Brisa drifted into deeper sleep. Then, through the secured port, Lucas slid out a blood sample we had collected earlier. He hurried it to the exam room while I remained by the glass, watching. One of the kits, smallest except for the runt, but bold, fierce, already sure, lifted its head. Its eyes glimmered, almost golden in the low light. It stared directly at me. I froze. Newborns don't focus. They don't fix their gaze. They don't choose targets. But this one did. I whispered, "What are you?" It blinked, slow, deliberate, as if acknowledging the question. Sura tapped the glass beside me. "We should name them," she said quietly. "For records." "Names make it harder," I muttered. "Names make them real." I didn't want them to be real. But before I could answer, Luca's voice crackled through the intercom. "Dr. Mara, you should come see this. Now." We crossed the hall. On the lab screen, under magnification, the blood sample glowed like a map with no legend. I leaned closer, heart pounding. He pointed. "Half the markers are Ursine bear, but the other half," His voice thinned. I can't match it. Not to any mustela. Not to any known terrestrial species. It's ordered, structured, but not naturally. Engineer, I whispered. Sura inhaled sharply. You're saying someone created them? No, Luca replied. I'm saying someone designed them. Like a blueprint, or a message written in DNA. The room felt suddenly small. Artificial creatures. Implanted embryos. A tortured bear used as a laboratory womb. And 11 infants that were already too intelligent, too coordinated, too aware. Before the weight of that truth could settle, the power dipped. A blink, then a flicker. The generator hummed back to life, but something in its rhythm fell off, like a heartbeat whispering a warning. I stepped into the corridor and checked the perimeter feed. Snow, trees, frozen emptiness, and then movement. 2 sets of headlights approaching the far fence. Slow, hunting slow. My stomach dropped. Sura, I said, someone's here. She joined me at the monitor, her jaw tightening. Hunters? No, I murmured. Hunters don't move like that, and they don't come at dawn. One truck stopped to the tree line. 2 figures stepped out. They didn't rush. They didn't sneak. They simply watched the refuge, hands in their pockets, silhouettes sharp in the cold. Waiting. Luca appeared at my shoulder. We should call it in. Not yet, Sura said. We don't know what we're dealing with. The figures stayed for 7 minutes. Then they got back in the truck. The headlights vanished into the white-blue morning. But I knew what their message was. We know, and we'll be back. I returned to the observation window, needing proof that the world inside Brisa's den was still untouched. But what I saw made my breath stumble. The bold kid, the one who had stared at me earlier, climbed onto Brisa's shoulder. Then, with eerie balance, it rose on its hind legs and pressed its tiny hand against the glass. Not paw, hand. 5 delicate fingers spreading, slowly, mechanically, mirroring me. Without thinking, I lifted my palm. It pressed back through the barrier, its head tilting in an all-too-human question. In its eyes I saw hunger, not for milk, not for warmth, for understanding. Something inside me broke open. Awe and dread rushed in together, impossible to separate. Sura stepped beside me. She whispered the fear I hadn't dared to speak. Mara, what if they're not meant for this world? I didn't look away from the glass. Then God help us, I whispered, if the world they're meant for comes looking. The storm hit at night. Wind slammed against the walls of the refuge, rattling vents and howling through old seams like a living thing hungry for entry. Power lines groaned under ice. Snow hammered the earth sideways, turning the world beyond our fences into a white void that erased shape, horizon, and certainty. I barely slept. None of us did. We checked the den every hour, each time bracing ourselves for disaster. But Brisa remained curled around her young, breathing in slow, protective waves. The kids slept in a tight mound, warm and pulsing with life. Only one stayed alert through the storm, the bold one. Her, the one I could no longer call it. I had started calling her Kiera in my notes, even though I swore I wouldn't name them. Names are dangerous. They give the heart a voice. By the 4th morning, the storm broke. The world returned in blinding white. Snow lay in glittering drifts, sculpted by wind into frozen dunes. The pines bowed, heavy with ice. We stepped outside to inspect the perimeter. With each crunch of our boots, I felt tension coil tighter in my spine. When we reached the back fence, Lucas stopped so abruptly I nearly collided with him. What is it? I asked. He pointed. Fresh tire tracks. Deep. Recent. My God, I whispered. They were here, during the storm. Sura radioed from the main hall. I hear you. Get inside. Now. We locked down. Her voice had changed. No hesitation, no debate. Just grim acceptance. Inside, I checked on Brisa again. She sensed a shift in the air. Her ears twitched, muscles tense beneath her fur. The kids stirred restlessly, chirping in small, anxious bursts. Kiera stood apart, eyes fixed on something I could not see, as if listening through walls, through storms, through miles. That night, I reviewed the den footage, scrubbing through hours on fast forward. And then I saw it. 2:13 a.m., Kiera sat upright, staring at the camera. Without warning, she chirped 3 short notes, then 1 long. A pattern, a signal, a call, and from somewhere beyond the forest, distant, faint, and chilling, the same pattern answered. I replayed it again and again, my pulse hammering harder each time. This wasn't instinct. This wasn't coincidence. They were communicating. With who? Or what? Before I could process the thought, the generator groaned. Lights flickered. The floor vibrated beneath my feet in 3 sharp pulses, like electrical breaths. What now? I hissed, rushing into the hallway. Luca met me halfway. Perimeter sensors are glitching. Cameras are looping. It looks like interference, I finished. External, not internal. The 3 of us headed toward the security room. Snow, static, and flickering trees filled the screens. And then suddenly, one camera cut to black. Then another. Then another. A silent takeover. Sura leaned forward. Is it the storm? No, Luca whispered. This is targeted. The radio crackled. For a moment, I thought it might be law enforcement. But instead, a voice, cold, male, and too calm, slid through the speaker. We know what you have. Step aside. No one has to get hurt. My blood turned to ice. Sura lunged for the transmit button. Identify yourself, or you have 1 hour. The line went dead. Silence fell heavy and absolute. We're calling in everything. State police, wildlife enforcement, military if we have to, Sura said, reaching for the restricted phone line. This is no longer containment. This is defense. But even as she dialed, a terrible clarity was dawning in me. They weren't coming for us. They were coming for them. We barricaded the maternity wing. Reinforced steel doors. Emergency locks. Manual bars. Tranquilizers loaded. Rifles, untrained in our hands, slung over our shoulders. I hated guns. Tonight, I welcomed them. Minutes crawled by like hours. Then it began. 3 sharp bangs against the outer access door. Not the subtle testing of hunters. Not the desperate pounding of amateurs. This was methodical, professional, precise. Brisa sensed it instantly. Her roar tore through the den, raw and earth-shaking. The kits scattered behind her. Kiera stood at her side, unafraid. The hallway lights strobed red. The alarm tripped. They breached the fence, Luca shouted, watching the live feed. 6 figures in black. Tactical gear. Silenced weapons. Moving as one. They're not poachers, he whispered. No, I said. They're operatives. The power died all at once. The backup generator failed a heartbeat later. Red emergency lights. Sirens screaming. Doors rattling under impact. They were inside. Gunfire erupted down the hall. Boots pounded closer. Luca grabbed my arm, forcing me back toward the inner barrier. Mara, we have to move. We can't leave them. I cried. His voice broke. We can't help them if we're dead. Before I could respond, glass shattered in the observation room. An intruder crashed through, landing between us and the den. He raised his weapon directly at the newborns. Brisa charged. Her roar drowned the world. She hit the man like an avalanche. Bones cracked. His scream ended before it fully formed. But more were coming. I lunged for the emergency lever, slam. The den door sealed shut, locking Brisa and her young inside. Safe for the moment. Luca and I backed into the corridor. A flash grenade rolled across the floor. White light. Explosive sound. My ears rang. My vision shattered into spinning fragments. When shapes returned, I saw shadows sweeping through smoke, stepping over their fallen comrade, weapons raised. For the last time, one of them barked, "Stand down." No, I whispered, pushing myself in front of the sealed den door. You want them, you go through me. He aimed, and then a sound rose from the den. Not a roar, not a cry, a signal. 3 short notes. 1 long, the same pattern from the forest, but louder, stronger, like a beacon. The lights flickered. The air vibrated. The glass behind me glowed with a strange amber shimmer. Kiera stepped into view inside the den, eyes shining, hand raised, answering someone I could not see. And in that moment, I knew the intruders weren't the greatest threat. Something else was coming. Something that had heard the call. Something that wanted its creations back. And the war for Brisa's children had only just begun. The intruders hesitated, Not because of me, but because the entire building began to hum. The vibration traveled through the walls, through the floor, through our bones. Kiera stood inside the den, glowing faintly, eyes fixed on something beyond us. The other kids gathered behind her, trembling but unafraid. Brisa bowed her head low, not in fear, in recognition, as if she had always known this moment would come. Outside, a blinding column of light cut through the storm-dark sky, piercing the snow and illuminating the refuge in a golden-white blaze. The men in black turned their weapons toward it, shouting into radios that no longer worked. Their confidence shattered, their mission suddenly small. The locks on the den door clicked open, one by one, without human touch. "No," I gasped, slamming my palm against the barrier. "Stay with me." But Kiera only turned her head toward me, blinking softly, as if thanking me, as if trying to tell me this was never my choice to make. She pressed her tiny hand to the glass. I lifted mine in return, tears blurring everything. Then the den door slid open. Light flooded in. A tall, slender silhouette appeared in the snow beyond the breach, its form bending the air around it. Kiera chirped the pattern one final time. The figure answered, not with sound, but with something deeper, something felt, not heard. Brisa rose, gathering her young, and stepped toward the doorway. She paused only once. Her amber eyes met mine through the glow, calm, grateful, ancient with understanding. I pressed my fist to my chest, the only goodbye I could give. Kiera was the last to leave. She looked back at me, eyes bright as stars, and a voice, not a sound, but a pulse of pure meaning, passed through me. "Thank you." And then they were gone. The light vanished. The intruders fled. Silence returned. Days passed. Investigators filed reports. The world moved on. But some nights, when the wind is still and the pines stand like witnesses, I hear it in the distance. 3 short notes, 1 long. Not a warning. A promise.